Would you like to get married? How do you picture your ideal mate, and how does that compare to God's picture of an ideal mate for you?
On today's edition of Family Talk, we'll talk about how to find the right mate for you.
Welcome to Family Talk. I'm Willie Oliver.
And I'm Elaine Oliver.
This is the program about strengthening families and inspiring hope.
This is a place where we'll talk about real family life and share tools for strengthening marriages and families.
I usually like to say when we have stronger marriages, we're more likely to have stronger families, stronger churches, and stronger communities.
I like that. I like stronger marriages and families, and so it's really good to talk about what's trending in the news about marriages and family and relationships.
Absolutely.
There's some really good statistics out right now. When it comes to top goals in life, Americans still put marriage at the top of the list. In fact, 93% rate having a happy marriage as either one of the most important or very important objectives.
What I'm hearing you say is that people really still want to get married.
People still want to get married. There's more. When asked to select top 2 goals, having a happy marriage far outweighed being in good health, which was the second highest goal.
That's really surprising, that I would rather be in a happy marriage than being healthy.
Well, you know, what's interesting, actually, that when we have a happy marriage, we're actually healthier physically, mentally. When we feel good about our relationships, it makes us feel better about ourselves.
This is true. So that's why people want to be happy and in happy relationships.
Yeah, but it's somewhat elusive to so many people.
Indeed.
And it's interesting to note that in studies of high school seniors, the #1 aspiration is to have a good marriage and family life. Only 10% of American women consider remaining single as an ideal.
So high school kids want to be in a happy marriage.
Yes.
In fact, they think about marriage even though they're in high school.
Yeah.
And women, only 10% of them don't really want to get married.
That's right.
So most of them do want to get married.
The majority of us still want to get married.
And yet, there are so many who are not getting married.
Well, it's an interesting thing because while we want to get married, sometimes maybe we're a little afraid. Some people are just a little afraid of getting married.
Or not finding the right person.
That's right. Or not finding the right mate.
Yes.
I found the right mate, though.
Oh, I did too.
You think so?
I think so.
After all these years?
After all these years.
Oh.
I'll do it again.
Oh.
That's right. And there's more. Benefits of marriage. In a New York Times article, Tara Parker Pope writes, for centuries, marriage was viewed as an economic and social institution, and the emotional and intellectual needs of the spouses were secondary to the survival of the marriage itself. But in modern relationships, people are looking for a partnership, and they want partners who make their lives more interesting.
Wow.
More interesting.
So again, the interesting thing to me is that people are looking for people.
They're looking for people.
To make their lives more interesting.
Yes, but they're not just looking for people. They're looking for interesting people. At least people they find interesting.
So they don't want boring people.
No, who wants to be with a boring person?
Right.
That makes me feel that probably you're interesting. That's why I'm with you.
You think so, huh?
I think so.
But there are also some benefits of marriage that I often hear you speaking about.
Indeed.
What are the benefits of marriage?
Well, there are a number of benefits in marriage, and what we know is that people who are married live longer, are happier, have better sexual relationships, and their children do better as well.
Wow, well, it's no wonder then that people want to be married, because I would want to be married if it meant that I was going to be healthier, that my children were going to do better. It's no wonder then that people desire to be married.
They also make more money.
Oh.
And they save more money.
And they save more.
So that's a big deal.
So they're wealthier.
Yes.
They're wealthier.
Wealthier and happier.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are some other interesting statistics. Professors at Monmouth University in New Jersey have studied how we use our relationships to accumulate knowledge and experiences, something they call self-expansion. Research shows that the more self-expansion people get from their partner, the more committed and satisfied they stay in a relationship.
So being married is also about growing.
It's about growing.
And about being your best self, or finding your best self.
Correct. So I guess the two kind of go together.
Yes.
You know, when we're looking for the right mate, we're also looking for someone that's going to help us be our best selves.
And some people like to say, someone who completes them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about how that works.
I know.
Yes,
And we're going to
yeah.
talk about that a little bit more when we delve into the show.
Yes.
About that whole notion of you complete me.
Yes.
What is that?
What is that?
Yeah, so
But
we'll talk a little bit more about
interesting information.
that. Yeah. So, you know, the thing that's really interesting to me is that in spite of the fact that so many of us still want to have this great marriage, we have high hopes about being married. Many of us are daunted by the research statistics on divorce. And we know that approximately 50% of all marriages in the United States end in divorce. It's a lower percentage for people in the church, but it's still high, even if it's 25%.
It is a high number. And so when you think that if you get married, you have a 50% chance of that marriage ending in divorce, or even 25% chance of that marriage ending in divorce, there is some apprehension. People are fearful and they're not sure. They want to be married, they want to be in a happy marriage, but they're not sure it's going to work for them.
So while these people still want to be married, many people still never make it to the altar. They're still looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right, but they may never end up making it to the marriage ceremony.
Well, you know, some of them think, you know, well, we've seen what has happened in my parents' marriage, people might say, and people who don't have very good experience with their parents' marriages tend themselves to also not be sure, like the guy who said, I was sure I married Miss Wright. I just didn't know her last name or her first name was always.
Okay, so we'll talk more about that
Yes.
in this next segment.
Yes, we look forward to that. So you want to get married? Well, this is the right show for you, because today we're talking about finding Mr. or Mrs. Right.
Well, of course, Willie, most people have a long laundry list of what they're looking for in a mate. We went downtown Washington, D.C. to ask people what they're looking for in a mate. Let's take a look.
I would say honesty is the most important, because if you can't trust someone, I don't see where you can go with that relationship.
Independent and knows what she wants.
I guess honesty is probably like the main thing. Just a guy that can actually be honest.
Just nice to have like a fun companion.
Passionate.
Yeah. Understanding.
Yeah, very
Cute.
flexible.
Yeah. Actually, he has to be taller than me, because I'm actually pretty short. So.
Hardworking.
Good time, good relationship with your family, like to travel. What else I like anyway? Good food.
It's really just about the vibes, honestly. It's not a particular type. It's just how you feel with that person.
You ain't got to have $1 million, but you need to be working somewhere.
And someone who's genuine and kind.
Genuine, probably the best word to describe it. I know, just someone, I guess someone you can laugh with, but then, you know that really cares about you. So, and, cute.
A real gentleman.
A real
That's what the quality I look for in a good man is a good heart.
Focus on my music. If I start thinking about women, I'll never get done. That's all I can tell you.
Loyalty.
Most important quality I look for is, kindness.
But heart, just heart, only heart.
That was amazing.
It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Hey, you remember what the people said they were looking for in a mate?
Well, I remember what I was looking for in a mate.
Well, but can you say what they were saying first?
I can say what they were saying.
What was that?
Well, many of them said that they wanted trust.
Yes.
One guy said he wanted his mate to be independent.
Yes.
That was fascinating to me,
Yes.
because I think a lot of men say that, especially when they think about the earning potential of women, but it doesn't always play out that way in marriage.
No, but if it does, you know, it's a bonus. Some guy said a millionaire or something like that.
Well, it's a bonus, but I don't necessarily think that a lot of people really want their spouses to be independent.
Well, you know, I heard them say kindness, honesty.
Yes.
There were a couple of women and their mother who said, hard worker. The younger woman said, hard worker. So someone who works hard.
Yeah.
Not someone who's a slouch or who's lazy. Someone who's going to be a partner. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really was good also was that people kept saying kindness.
Yes.
You know, that also goes back to this whole notion of wanting to be in a happy marriage.
Yes.
You know, when we search for someone, we're thinking about someone who's going to be kind, someone who we can have a good time with. And it's kind of sad sometimes that it doesn't always end up that way.
Well, it doesn't always end up that way because people forget once they get married why they got married. If they kept doing some of the things that they were doing before they got married, trying to impress one another, just keep impressing each other after you get married.
Yeah.
You know, but they were saying kindness, and I heard kindness several times, as you said, and trust, and several people said trust. There was a woman who said, well, she wasn't sure, but it's all about the vibe, she said. It has to be the right vibe.
Yeah, the
I guess
vibe.
she couldn't quantify it, but she could just feel it. You know,
Yeah,
it was
we need
more
to talk
qualitative than quantitative.
We need to talk a little bit more about that. But
Yes.
tell me, what were you looking for in a mate?
Well,
Or do I want to hear this?
well, you know, well, it's 28 years later, so do or die. You know, it's happened. I certainly was. I was looking for someone who loved Jesus, for someone who was going someplace. You know, was.
What do you mean by that? Going
Well,
someplace?
you know,
I was going
interested
to
in school, interested in finishing school, not just staying in school forever, but finishing school, doing something with their lives. Someone who had goals and aspirations, someone who was hardworking, honest, kind, and certainly your winsome smile, your kind smile won me over. Yes.
Well, you know, I was talking to our son Julian the other day, and I told him
were
that,
you?
that one of the things that attracted me to you was the fact that you had good shoes.
Amazing.
I can't say that that necessarily that was on the top of my list, but it was funny because he said, "Oh, now I'm going to be very conscious of my shoes."
And he wears good shoes too.
He does wear good shoes, but I
Well,
think
you know, the fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree.
well, a lot of the things that people were saying were really good values, and they were real characteristics that are characteristics that could make for a good marriage. But what I think was very interesting is that so often people say what they are looking for in a mate
Instead of what they should be contributing
instead
to the
of what
relationship.
they should be contributing.
Yes.
And you know, there was a recent article in Psychology Today that asked the question, are you the right mate?
Yes.
Are you the right mate?
Yes.
And people need to begin by asking themselves, yes, it's important to have a list of things that you're looking for, and that's very important to look for those things. And you said a very important thing, which was someone that loves the Lord. You know,
Yes.
if we're people of faith, if we're people who believe in God, that should certainly be, I would believe, at the top of our list. But then we need to ask ourselves, are we following God's will?
Indeed.
You know, are we doing what God wants us to do? Are we finding the person that perhaps God is putting in our path?
Well, what I do know is that when you look at the literature and you look at research and studies that have been done on premarital couples, we know that people who do best in marriage are people who have the same feelings about God, love God the same way, have the same patterns of church attendance, and you know, have similar values. And since values come from our religious beliefs, people who believe in God tend to have similar values and tend to have higher levels of marital satisfaction and marital stability than people who don't.
There's that word again, satisfaction.
Satisfaction
and stability. So that's the happy marriage, but more than a happy marriage, a stable marriage, a lasting marriage.
Right.
So when people are saying that they want to have a happy marriage, they need to look at maybe having a long-lasting marriage. But you know what? We've got to stop here for now.
Yes.
And when we come back, we'll talk more about looking for the right mate. Welcome back to Family Talk. Today we're talking about finding the right mate. So before we ended, Willie, we were talking about characteristics. We also spoke about the fact that, you know, what people should be looking for. And we were talking about this whole notion of having a happy and a satisfying marriage.
That's what people want.
That's what people want.
Yes.
But there's also this other notion that comes up, and that's this whole notion of a soulmate.
I've heard
that,
it.
you know, people are searching for their soulmate. Even that woman on the tape, you know, she said, you know, I'll have that feeling. I'll know the feeling when it comes.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit more.
Well, you know, invariably, I've heard young adults, and not only young adults, older people who are perhaps going into a second marriage, but young adults saying, when I get married, I'm really looking for a soulmate. I see lots of marriages breaking up, and I don't want to get into a relationship where it's going to break up. Remember, they're looking for happiness, and 93% of the population is saying, marriage, I want to be a part of that. I want to have a part of that. And if I'm going to have a part of that, I don't want to be the 50% that's going to get divorced, or the 25% if you're in the church, depending on where the statistic is. They want to be in a happy marriage. They want to be in a relationship where they really feel connected to the other individual. So they think, man, if I could just find a soulmate. The reality is there's no such thing.
That's
I'm sorry to burst anyone's bubble. You know. There's no such thing.
You know, before you go on, you know, I remember when we first got married.
Yes.
And I remember you making a statement once in your sermon. And it had it said something like this, and you can correct me, but it was something like the fact that God doesn't just have one person on this earth for you. And I think it was a single sermon, and you were talking about finding the right mate.
Right.
And you made a comment similar to the fact that there isn't just one person. And I have to say, as a young bride, I was a little crushed because I thought I was the only person for you.
Yeah.
And so it was a little shocking for me to hear that.
I think that I actually said more than that. I said, you know, when I got married, I said I could have gotten married to any of 2 or 3 different people.
Oh my goodness, you're going to crush me again.
No, I don't mean
I'm
to
just
crush
kidding.
you,
I'm just kidding.
But that's
no,
the
because I
reality.
know exactly what you mean.
That is the reality, that individuals sometimes have this false notion that there's one person out there for them. One person. So if they get married and it's not going so well, they get the feeling that they're married to the wrong person.
That they're married
and
to the wrong person.
since there's such a high value of getting married to someone who's going to make them happy.
And to the right person.
Yes, who's going to make them happy. If this person isn't making them happy, this is not the right person.
Yeah.
I need to look for my soulmate, but that's a fallacy. The reality is soulmates are not born, are not found. Soulmates are made.
Yeah.
In the crucible of marriage.
That's right.
In the give and take and the growing together of a marital relationship, people begin to gel. But for that to happen, they have to be intentional about wanting to be the right person. Not only finding the right person, but making sure that they themselves are the right person.
Yeah, you know what? I love the text in Psalms 37:4, where it says, delight yourself in the Lord.
Yes.
And he will give you your heart's desires.
The reality is God has promised to supply all of our needs. If we're people of faith, then we need to know that this is not something to be worried about. I know, as you go to different churches, there are a number of single adults. There are people who are looking for a mate. They haven't found the right mate. And invariably, I see them getting frustrated. The good news is that God has promised to never leave us. He's promised to keep us in perfect peace, and He's promised to supply all of our needs. That includes a mate. That includes the right mate. But we need to know what we are about so that we're looking for someone who is about some of those same things that we are about. Here's what we know, just based not only in Scripture, but based on social scientific knowledge, that the more things people have in common, the easier it's going to be to have a great relationship. And for that to happen, people really need to examine themselves and find out, what is it that I'm about? But even more than that, because we're not always honest with ourselves. We believe strongly, as you and I have spoken about over the years and speak with young adults and individuals thinking about marriage, that pre-engagement counseling is important. Invariably, people wait until they're getting married, they have a date set, They have put down some money on the church. They've bought a dress or something like that.
And then it's hard for them
yes,
to change.
Yes.
And so this whole notion of pre-engagement counseling is to really get some counseling. Once you think you found someone
Yes.
who, first of all, you've been praying
Yes.
and you've been seeking God's will.
Yes.
So you understand that perhaps this is the direction that God is leading you in.
Yes.
So that's first and foremost for Christians.
Yes.
Secondly, they share similar values.
Similar values.
They believe in God the same
Yes.
way. They're of the same religion. And then you like this person.
Yes.
You know, you enjoy being in their company.
You like some of the same
You like
things.
some of the same
Some of the
things.
same food, some of the same activities.
So that's a good time for you to perhaps seek
Absolutely.
counseling. We're not talking about 21-year-olds or
No.
18-year-olds.
Right.
We're talking about mature adults who are ready to take that step
And
towards
what does
marriage.
that mean, mature adults? I would say someone who's at least 25, and not to say that you can't get married before 25, but what we do know is that people who get married after 25 do better than people who get married before 25.
Yeah, you know, this is a great conversation, Willie. But you know what? We can talk ad infinitum about this topic. And finding the right mate is not the easiest thing to do, but we really encourage people to make sure that they're in tune with God's will. So stay with us, and we'll be right back. And then we'll share with you today's takeaway from finding the right mate.
So today we've been talking about finding the right mate. As we were saying, Elaine, just before we went to break, pre-engagement counseling.
Yes.
What about it? Say some more.
Well, that, you know, it's important not to waste time in your relationships. And we were talking about the fact that we're not talking about children. We're talking about people who are seriously now looking for a marriage partner. And so once you meet someone and you share similar values about God, you
want some of the same things out of life.
You want some of the same things out of life.
Yes.
You enjoy being with each other, and they
Right.
have some of the things that you're looking for. We've already established that you're working on being those things as well.
Correct.
That you're working on being kind and loyal and trustworthy.
And
So-
usually those don't just happen because you met someone you like. Those are things you're practicing all of your life.
That's right. That's right. It's a part of who you are.
That's the person who you are.
Yeah.
So essentially, if you are the kind of person that is looking for integrity, is because you are a person of integrity.
That's correct.
But you have to practice
That's correct.
integrity. You can't
Yeah.
just talk about it.
So it's a good time to go to premarital counseling, because some people will say pre-engagement counseling.
Pre-engagement.
Some people will say, how do I know if this person has potential? We've only been dating about 3 months. Actually, that's a good time
Yes.
to go, because now you want to spend the next few months
Correct.
seeing if this person really has potential.
Right.
It's really difficult for us to work with people when it's like they said, well, you know, we dated for 3 years or 4 years.
Why so long?
and you-
Don't waste any time.
Yeah, don't waste any time.
That's what I would say to young adults. Don't waste any time. Time is life. And every time you spend time with someone, you are investing your time. And you need to be investing instead of wasting. So people are 2-3
I
years
like that.
dating, 2-3 years dating, and they say, well, I'm not sure. Well,
Yeah, if you're
what's
not
holding you?
sure after 2-3 years, really, it's time to move on.
Yes, it is.
If you're not sure.
That is
Because if
correct.
you're seeking God's will
Yes.
and you're dating this person, you share similar values, if you're not sure, it means there are red flags.
And you
if
need to
there
pay
are red
attention to them.
flags, just like when you're at the beach
Yes.
and the red flags go up to say there's a shark or a tsunami or something, you
Or
don't try
rough
to...
waters.
Or rough waters.
Yes.
You don't try to go into the water. You get away as quickly as you can.
That's right.
So if you see some red flags, then you really need to move on. But there's something I want to add real quickly for
Right.
those people who have been looking
Right.
for a long time and they feel like there really isn't someone out there for them.
Yes.
Again, I go back to that text. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. So we've got to trust God, and I know that is so difficult for people to hear, but it is very possible that God, this is God's plan for them.
I wish we had more time.
I really wish we had more time, but from this day forward, we hope that God will give you the desires of your heart as you trust Him to help you find the right mate and also to be the right mate.
That's all for today's Family Talk. Join us again when we'll talk more about strengthening families and inspiring hope.